It's my computer that it's my computer that's like that. Okay, now that's a lot better. That's a lot better. Get down. Get down. Get down. Thank you, baby. Thank you, baby. Just double checking that this is going to work and not lag before I start talking, just so there's no dead air and you're just looking at my pretty face. So that's what I'm waiting on at the current moment. I also want to create a poll. Where are you from? I was to say, how are you going to tell me that there's no live video and I'm looking at the live video now? Sometimes I don't know about this. Wait, I don't care anymore about the internet. I don't care anymore about the internet. Just go away. Share that I'm live. Are you gonna tell me anything? Alright, so let's do this now that I know that nothing is lagging. I guess I can start talking and I don't feel like anything is going to be missing. Alright, so let's do this. Sometimes I wonder why laptops are slower than cell phones. I swear. Sometimes I don't understand. All right, so let's start this now that I know that there's be no lagging. Let me make sure everything is good to go with going live. Make sure I can see it on my mobile phone. If I see it on my mobile phone, then that means I know that you guys can see it. All I ever wanted in love. There it is. There's my live. Alright. And we're good. Share. Let's share this. Share with friends. Share. All right, everything's good to go. We got my live going on. Just want to make sure everything was good to go before I started talking and boring you guys with. Oh, it was Lady Gaga's fault. All right, so we're just gonna wait for one more person to join us before we start. And I love that everyone is here. I love that we're doing this. All right, so let's get started. We are starting a little bit late, but that's just because I had just a bit of an issue um, with my internet. So I was a little bit wondering why was there lagging, but now there's no more lagging. I had to restart everything, and we are good to go. So good evening, happy Friday, Shabbat Shalom, everything, all the above. I'm Johnny B. Mitchell. I'm your author today for the collection, The First Chronicle. Well, I want to thank you, everybody, for just your undying support. This has been 2 years in the making. I started writing this when in 2008, August. I remember exactly where I was. I was on the BART on my way to work in San Francisco. And I remember thinking to myself, I knew that writing was my forte. I knew that I loved writing, and I did short stories for college, and I was doing writing here and there for just hobbies and, just to get it out of my system. But what ended up happening, I remember I was on BART in August of 2008, and I remember thinking of the name Kenny. And I remember thinking, I wanted to write around that character. So I started to build this character and I started to uh, create everything about this world that was I was creating on the BART. And I never forget it was I don't have a copy, but I never forget it was on a um, it was on a yellow pad of paper, one of those yellow pads, legal pads. Yeah, and I was just writing to no end on that pad on the BART on my way to San Francisco. The stop I was getting off at maybe was probably Powell Street. To be to remember correctly, it was Powell Street. I was getting off at that, and I was working at Smith Emery at the time, and I created this book on the BART on the way to Smith Emery. Well, 2008. And then 2014, I actually had a chance to finally sit down and finally write and create this, to create everything about this world. And I did, at this time, I was laid off, so I had all the time in the world to do everything that I needed to do for this book. So I sat down and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote. And I mean, I sat at the laptop and I had maybe a joint each day that I was writing, and I just went. I went with it. I let go and I let God. And I have someone that's trying to get in this. So it's amazing how just being laid off, just the tiny things in life gave birth to a bigger victory. And this book, I mean, it went from, I started writing it actually as a thriller, something that I was trying to do without magic and supernaturals and all of that. I was trying to do it more as a, like who did it and why type book. And I remember I kept hitting a writer's block. And every time I kept hitting that writer's block, I could never understood at that time why I kept hitting that writer's block. And one day I was sitting at the computer. Oh, I remember it was the pilot of the show called Once Upon a Time. And Once Upon a Time, I was watching that show and I remember thinking to myself, this is why I hit the writer's block. Because the whole thriller aspect, I needed more training, more writing in that genre. And I remember thinking the supernatural, the fantasy, the magic, all of that, that is where my forte was. And I remember I sat down and it just opened up. Everything opened up. And it just so happened that in 2 years, 2014 to 2016, this is what I got for the book one. I mean, you're talking about 900, well, before I even lie to you, let me tell you, 360 pages front to back. So I guess double that, 634, I guess, or something. Front to back. This is what ended up being the final rough draft was this for the first book. And I still have it, and I'll never get rid of this. This is my love. I remember I was moving from LA back to Oakland, and this is what I had on me on the bus on the way to Oakland was my book. And I didn't have it printed at the time I was writing it. And it was, I loved the experience. It was amazing how everything, it just happened, how the universe just opened up. It was just time was allowed for me to do this because I've been thinking about doing this since 2008. And it wasn't until 2014 that I was actually able to sit down and to go over my rewrites, to go over my edits, to go over the gutting of everything. Because as a writer, you know that, excuse me, my cat is at the door. Come on, baby. So, for anybody who's wondering why I had to just interrupt, this is the kitty that was at my door, whining the entire time, and he's still whining at this time as I have him in my hand. Well, you know, the collection, the first Chronicle, is, I would say, my baby. It's something that I was never able to give up. I was never able to just put on the back burner and just move on to something else. This always stayed on me. This always stayed in my mind. This always stayed with me as the years progressed. And I remember just thinking to myself as I was progressing through writing this book, it's just how much I could not understand why I would find myself in this hole. This it wasn't a block. It was just like I would write a few chapters and then I'd be like, "Oh, I need to redo that. Oh, I don't like the way that sounds. I don't like the way they're talking." And so I would rewrite it, and then I would rewrite it, and then I would rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it. And it's like, when am I ever gonna be done? So I finally finished in 2016 and I had everything printed. And I remember it was this guy I was staying with in Hollywood, and he had a printer, and I just thought everything is like, wow. I mean, he was cool and everything. I didn't find him romantically inclined to be that type of person. But he knew about my gift, and he knew what I was doing every time I sat at his laptop and was editing. And I got to the point where I was done editing and I printed, and everything printed this front to back. And I think there's maybe a few pages. I just turned to one that doesn't even have anything printed on the back. So it took almost an hour for this thing to print. For everything to print on this, it took an hour. But I'm glad because after 2016, I worked on getting it edited and published. And It would have been published a lot sooner had I not been so wrapped up on traditional publishing. And I remember my older brother Robert had told me that you should, self-publish. You should do that because traditional publishers want a certain type of aspect. Um, Sorry, someone's trying to access through Safari and Facebook Live does not access through Safari, and I have six cats, so I'm sorry for the interruption. However, once 2016 ended and I was able to get this printed and I was able to edit it and I was able to go through everything that needed to be done, and then my brother told me about the self-publishing, I just said to myself, at first I pushed it off. And I just said, I want to do the traditional publishing because, having a book like this is, hmm, everybody wants a book like that. Uh, but I started thinking to myself, we're in 2020. Well, at that time, 2019. And this is something, it's time to be up with the times. And this type of book can come in its due time, which it has. It's on sale now on Amazon for the paperback. But the self-publishing, the self-publishing, that is what it came down to. The self-publishing. And I finally did it. I just gave in. I gave into it. And when I gave into it, a whole new world, as Aladdin and Jasmine sang. It was a whole new world. It just opened up and everything just, oh, wow. It was amazing. I created the characters Kenny. I created the characters Kenny and his friends, um, who I know off the back. Okay, so let's go. Sean, who is his best friend, who has a potty mouth. It's just, I mean, anything you can think of. What is the title of the book? Oh, I'd be glad to tell you, my love. Uh, uh, the characters of my book come in a book called The Collection, First Chronicle, and I'm trying to type this and say it at the same time, and I guess I'm not that computer savvy. Sean, I remember being in class one day, and I was told that if you ever have to create a character and you ever have to do profanity, that it shouldn't be your main character. I mean, profane language, here and there, off and on, occasionally is okay. But the collection had a character named Sean who, in my real life, I had a friend who just every other word was a profane language, and that's life. So, I'm not going to be like, oh, stop talking like that. I just based the character off of it. And so that's where I got Sean. Now he isn't just a profane character. It's a character who speaks his mind. He doesn't have a filter. It's someone who isn't worried about whose feeling he hurts. And that's the character of Sean. You have Tanya, who is also one of the close friends to the main character. She grew up with the main character, and she went to high school with him. That's her role. That's how she fits into all this. She never left his side, even though they went different directions after in college. They never left each other's side. They either kept in contact either via um, text or phone or whatever. It wasn't until the actual book happened where they were in the same vicinity. And so they are introduced back into each other's lives. He does have. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my cats. If you're wondering why I'm looking back, if you are, and so then we have three other characters in Kenny's life, which is Junior or Johnson Ross. That's where I came up with Junior. I'm just that creative. Theodore Mathis and Jerry. These are all friends of his, close friends of his that he had in college because, all of us have our friends in college that we keep in adulthood or, after we graduate college. And those are his friends that he kept after college or that stayed with him after college was Jerry Jr. and Teddy is what I call him. These are also semi-main characters, but they aren't main, if you know what I mean. So supporting characters. They are there to help him understand life, understand brotherhood, understand all of that you need for a main character to understand. He is the Messiah, but it depends on what do you think a Messiah is. And so, if anyone has courage, if anyone has the fight in their spirit, anyone can be a Messiah. And that is the concept of my book. And that being said, I'm going to read a few excerpts from the book, from the first chapter, and then we will go from there. Chapter 1. Lightning broke through the darkened gray sky, illuminating a sea of vines and thorns, intertwined with each other on a destroyed rocky plain. Fire fell off the sides of steep cliffs into the void of an ocean of stars, while a large tower dominated the misty horizon. A tall silhouette of a man stood below the mist, and a rapid shake and a deep gong sounds, wavy rings of light jetted from the center of the battlements, with a whisper of a name in the rush of the wind. Kenneth! With a small gap, an average heighted guy opened his eyes to still find himself waiting in a long grocery store line. Impatiently, he tore off a strand of thread from his short-sleeved auburn plaid V-neck, which complemented his khaki shorts, showing off his semi-hairy caramel skin. Dark blue sunglasses rested on top of his faded black hair. He gripped a box of red wine in one hand and a case of his favorite pumpkin ale in another. Two guys ahead of him were arguing with the cashier about the price of a reusable bag. Kenny kept checking the mini text message that vibrated in his pocket from his best friend Sean Harris, who was out in the car waiting in the parking lot. He had been friends with Sean since birth, and they had grown up in the same neighborhood of Miami, Florida. They both had gone to the same schools until high school, when Sean had gone away to military camp and Kenny went to a local public high school. They were thick as thieves, and typically when one was in trouble, the other was right behind him in trouble. During college, the two stopped traveling to see each other, with Kenny in college in California and Sean in the Air Force Academy. A year after a huge breakup in which Kenny found himself broke and homeless, Sean, now living in Oakland, invited his best friend to live with him. Kenny was grateful to have Sean in his life and had finally approached the teller, who annoyingly rung up two beverages, and giving a half smile. Identification, please. She tapped her finger. She tapped her register and sighed heavily at Kenny's full $1 million smile. He fished his driver's license out of his pants pocket, and when the cashier examined it, she quickly muttered, Miami, huh? You don't look 30. Well, thanks. I'll be 31 in less than 6 months, but I love birthdays and always celebrated in South Beach growing up. Before my family made me reinvent my life and start. Great. That'll be 2083, please. Kenny lost his pleasant smile and made a face as he went into his pocket for a 20. His text message alert went off again as he kept digging for the remaining change. I have 80 cents. He laid silver change onto the counter. 2083. 3. Kenny's blood began to simmer as he inhaled deeply. Take off. Just give me the pumping L then. Can I get your identification, please? Again? Just forget it. Frustrated, Kenny dropped the items on the belt and left out the store without a thanks. Only the sound of his brown leather sandals flapping away and the beeps of register behind him. It was a partly cloudy day as the flock of geese flew over the grassy hills and the wind rippled through the trees and over the houses. Downtown Oakland stood high over the lake, like dwarves hovering over their gold with songs of horns blaring from the freeways that tore in and out of the heart, with large billboard that read, and you Oakland natives will know, Inspire Oakland. Foliage littered the streets while a warm breeze swayed the leaves gently. The path around Lake Merritt was swarming with joggers and walkers alike, lost in their own world of earphone music, while the geese passed overhead swiftly toward the bay and the sparkles of rays from the lake. The grocery store sat in the junction of the lake and the Oakland Museum, with traffic filling up the parking lot fast. There was a white Jetta that sat in the fire zone that started honking vigorously when Kenny walked out. Sean had rolled down the passenger side window and had the most fake expression of anger Kenny had ever seen. Sean, who had always wore loose-fitted clothing, today had a button-down blue and white Caribbean shirt with sleeves that came to his elbow, like mine, like this, sleeves that came to his elbow. It hung over his fit, smooth chest, and his floppy pants showed no sign of rigorous leg crunches, because they were loose. His dark sunglasses were already perched on his face as Kenny got into the car, the passenger side car, with a huff. Are we going to the liquor store, or are we just going to sit right here in the fire zone illegally with that silly look on your face? Silly? Sean's tenor voice muttered softly. Nothing about me is silly. And why in the hell are we going to a liquor store when we are sitting in front of a store? It's Friday afternoon, Sean. Your face looks silly, and you wouldn't be asking those questions if you weren't being helped by an unhappy cashier. Look, don't get smart. As Sean threw the car into gear, he huffed as 3 different families crossed in front of his car. He looked at Kenny. Not any vodka, huh? No. And if that's what you're, and that's what you try to get, and that's what you get for trying to speed out of here. And that was an excerpt of chapter 1. And I will say that as I was writing this, it was one of those aspects where I was actually at that grocery store, and it was Lucky's grocery store that I was at. And so we established Kenny, we established his friend Sean. So now we're going to end the excerpt with establishing uh, the concept of his protector, Christian. And Christian, as a protector, is sworn to do anything and everything that is necessary to protect his custody, is what they call the ones that they are in charge of protecting. And I just want to, as I take a look at this, I just want to say hey to everyone that is here. Amazing. Thank you, Jillian. Jervis, hello, my dear. I miss seeing you so much. All right, so I am finally where I need to be in our next and last excerpt. Okay, well, I lied. I was not where I needed to be in our next and last excerpt, page down. All right, so I am where we need to be. So if you don't mind, I'm going to start and then we will end. A small hummingbird hovered for a second and focused and then buzzed off, which is odd to Kenny after all the dream interpretations of hummingbirds that he had received. He sprung out the back door of his kitchen and was amazed by what he saw. Flocks of hummingbirds were flying in the breeze over the house toward the front of it. They snaked in the sky and were nesting in the trees above the unabandoned house across the street. It was a magnificent sight to see to him. Some of the birds had purple heads, some were rainbow all over, and others were many shades of brown. And then one small rainbow dragonfly flew in front of his face and then zoomed off in the instant. Kenny went in suddenly as the birds had all nested in the trees. He heard a huge scream from the living room about foul play and why is no one calling that as his friends Sean and Junior were watching the football game. Another yell came again, and it was cheers from Junior's son Madison. Placing the book he had of dreams on the edge of the stairs, he dashed outside in a dreaming daze about the hummingbirds. They had spread a sense of serenity around him, and as he crossed the street, the birds took flight suddenly as he rounded the corner and followed the tail end of the flock into a small empty park. The sun was breaking through the spotty clouds before its rays were hidden as the last bird disappeared over the oak trees. Kenny inhaled deeply as he slowly turned around to a voice asking, "Hey, what time is it?" He never got a chance to look at the stranger because once he tried to look for the time, his phone was knocked out of his hand. The punch landed in his left eye and it knocked him to the ground. Large boots were kicking him in the gut, causing him to wheeze and gasp, while a few more punches landed across his face. He could taste the blood in his mouth as he tried to crawl away in a panic. His vision was blurred, but he swore he saw the flash of a flame shoot across his head before those three bodies dropped to the ground, lifeless and charred. The smell of lilac and lavender overwhelmed his senses when the sound of feet sent him into a panic, another panic. No, 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 no. Stay calm, Kenny. Stay calm. It's okay. It's okay. How do you know my name? Kenny could only see a dark blur as he tried to sit up. A sharp pain sent him screaming back to his face. Here, here, here. Let me. Stay calm. Kenny felt a small poke of a laser going into his shoulder before his vision cleared and he saw his wounds heal before his own eyes. Three arrows stuck out of the head of three hooded bodies still simmering, sending shivers down Kenny's spine. Are you okay? A slightly accent baritone voice asked gently. The gory scene made Kenny forget he was saved for a moment. A sudden feeling of safety passed through him when he locked eyes with his savior, the two smiling like little school kids. The caramel-toned gentleman had a smile that was forcefully infectious, and perfect with a small gap in between his front teeth. His frameless oval glasses covered his brown eyes that perfectly fit on his nose. He wore a ball cap fitted on his head, a silver flying hummingbird pendant against his neck bone, and he was dressed in a brown sweatsuit with a hood coming from out the back. "Let's get you back home now," he said. You killed them, you know that, right? Killed who? When Kenny looked over again, the three bodies were gone, with only soot laying in their stead. The gentleman lifted Kenny to his feet, swung his arms over for support, and the two slowly began to trek back downhill. Who are you? And you didn't answer my first question. How do you know my name? Well, my name is Andre Archer, but why are we so formal? You can call me, my friends call me Christian. And you can say I'm somewhat of a secret bodyguard. Kenny was so taken he felt a quick flutter pass through his chest, but still let out a scuff. Hey, okay, sure. Hired by who? Well, it wouldn't be a secret if I told you now, would it? And we'll end it there. So that is the collection, the first Chronicle. That is my first book. Those are the excerpts of chapter one. I have gone over 5 minutes beyond the time that I had allotted. So if I'm just happy to have this out in the world, I'm happy to have you guys here with me in sharing in the art, sharing in the love. I want to thank you for having this time and listening to me and giving me the space and the time and the continuum to share this with you. So be well, be safe in this time of Corona. We all know that staying smart will save our lives. And I don't start writing about this Corona until book four, so don't look for don't look for this in any of my books anytime soon. But I love you all. Share the art, share the love, share the wealth, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Shalom.